First thing I saw was Foolio laid up. I thought it was a car accident until I looked up, saw the bullet holes, and I saw Zay covered in blood yelling.
Tears streamed down faces as Julio's cousin took the stand, fighting to hold himself together while describing those final, haunting moments. His voice cracked, trembling under the weight of grief, as he revealed the very last words Julio spoke before collapsing, words so heavy they froze the entire courtroom in place. But it was what came next, his shocking confession that left even the judge speechless, unable to hide his disbelief. The Hillsborough County Courthouse in Tampa, Florida, had seen plenty of trials, but nothing like this. On October 22, 2025, a silence so suffocating fell over the room that you could practically hear people holding their breath, waiting for what would come next. The weight of the moment pressed down like a storm cloud, grief, tension, truth, and tragedy all colliding at once. This wasn't just another court date, it was a defining moment in Florida history. A trial that exposed not just a murder, but a decade-long war born from the streets of Jacksonville. A feud that had swallowed entire neighborhoods and bled into drill rap culture, turning art into ammunition and lyrics into lifelines. And sitting on that stand was Vilonia Norris, cousin to the slain rapper Julio Foolio, whose real name was Charles Andrew Jones II. But Norris wasn't just another name on the witness list. He wasn't there for fame or sympathy. He was there carrying the weight of blood, loyalty, and loss. He was family, the one who had seen the pain up close, the one who had watched a dreamer turn target. That courtroom didn't just hear testimony that day, it felt it. Every word he spoke sliced through the air like a blade, a reminder that behind every headline, there's a heartbeat, and behind every feud, there's a family left shattered forever. He wasn't just a witness. He was one of the survivors. One of the few who lived through that nightmare inside the black Dodge Charger on June 23, 2024, when the night exploded with chaos. Out of the shadows of a Tampa hotel parking lot, masked gunmen emerged and unleashed what prosecutors would later describe as a hellish storm of bullets. He wasn't reading from a report or quoting secondhand details. He was there. He saw his cousin, his blood, his brother, in spirit, Julio Foolio, in those final, desperate moments of life. And now, more than a year later, he was being forced to relive every second of that horror in front of a jury, in front of cameras, in front of the entire world. As Vilonia Norris took the stand, his voice cracked beneath the weight of memories he had buried deep inside. It was the sound of trauma resurfacing, of wounds reopening in public. Everyone watching could tell this wasn't going to be a cold, calculated recounting of events. This was going to be raw. This was going to be painful. This was going to be real. He painted the picture, the laughter, the celebration, the sense of peace before the storm. They were just vibing, riding high after a night of partying for Julio's 26th birthday. What was supposed to be a night of joy, a rare escape from constant tension, became the night that would claim his life and scar everyone who survived.
So you fell asleep after that, after he came back to the car, or you started dozing?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember being woken up at some point, or woke up?
Yes, I think when the car hits, I don't remember exactly what it hit, but the car hit something that woke me up.
He remembered the sudden silence before it all began, the eerie calm right before the gunfire tore through the darkness. The confusion in those first few seconds must have been unbearable. The sound of bullets piercing metal, windows shattering, people screaming his cousin's name. It all hit at once. What started as a celebration ended as a massacre, leaving Norris with memories that would haunt him forever. Imagine being snapped out of sleep, your heart pounding, your thoughts scattered, and before your mind can even catch up, you know something is terribly, horribly wrong. That's the nightmare Vilonia Norris found himself in. On the stand, his voice shook as he explained how his half-awake brain tried to make sense of the chaos. At first, he thought it was a car accident, a crash, an impact, something normal, something his mind could explain. But then, reality hit him like a freight train. As his eyes adjusted and the ringing in his ears faded, the truth became undeniable. What he saw next shattered every ounce of hope that this was some kind of freak collision. He looked around, disoriented, searching for reason, for logic, but there was none. When he looked up, expecting to see another car, some wreckage, maybe flashing lights, what he actually saw stopped him cold. Bullet holes, dozens of them. Not one, not two. A full-on barrage of destruction. The Charger was riddled with metal wounds, its frame shredded by gunfire, glass shattered everywhere. It didn't look like a car anymore. It looked like a war zone on wheels. That's when it hit him. This wasn't an accident. This was an ambush. A coordinated execution planned down to the second, carried out with ruthless precision. And then, through the haze of smoke and chaos, Norris turned and saw Xavier "Za" Edwards, the driver, another survivor in this blood-soaked nightmare. His clothes were soaked red, his hands trembling, his voice breaking as he screamed, desperate for help, trying to process the unthinkable happening right in front of him.
Xavier Edwards?
Yes.
You saw him covered in blood?
Yes.
All right, so let me talk to you about Xavier Edwards. I don't know if we talked about him yet. So Xavier Edwards was also there at the clubs with you all?
Yes.
And he was driving the Dodge Charger coming from the clubs to the hotel?
Yes.
The prosecutor's questions cut through the silence like blades, forcing Norris to relive the horror frame by frame. When he began describing his own injuries, the glass embedded in his skin, the ringing in his ears, the blood pooling around his legs, the full picture started to take shape. This wasn't random violence. This was a hit, a cold, calculated message delivered in bullets. And the courtroom, once filled with whispers, now sat frozen in disbelief, realizing just how close every single person in that car had come to death that night. Norris revealed a detail so chilling it silenced the entire courtroom, a piece of the story that showed just how close he came to death himself. It painted a picture of pure chaos, of violence that struck without thought, without mercy, without aim. He explained how, in that instant, bullets didn't care who they hit or where they landed. Metal and flesh tore alike, random, cruel, and senseless. It wasn't targeted. It was mayhem, unleashed. He told the court he had been lying on his side when the gunfire erupted, half asleep, unaware, completely defenseless. In that vulnerable position, a bullet found him. It tore through his arm near his shoulder, ripping through his flesh like paper. 1 inch difference, and he wouldn't have been alive to tell the story. The randomness of it, the fact that survival came down to mere inches, made the entire room go quiet. When the prosecutor asked if he still had a scar from that wound, Norris simply nodded and whispered, "Yes." Just that one word, so soft, yet so powerful, hung in the air heavier than any shout could have. That scar wasn't just a mark, it was a memory carved into his skin, a permanent reminder of the night that almost ended him. Every time he looks at it, every time he takes off his shirt or catches a glimpse of it in the mirror, he's dragged right back to that parking lot.
Is he saying anything at that point?
Yes, he was yelling.
What was he yelling? And you can say exactly what he said.
Yes, he was like yelling like shit.
Back to the flashing muzzle lights, the screaming, the smell of gunpowder. The prosecutor then held up photographs, images of Norris in the hospital, bloodied, hooked up to tubes, eyes swollen and distant. And when she asked if those pictures were of him, something in him broke. You could see the fight in his face, the struggle to keep it together, to stay composed, but it was too much. The weight of reliving that trauma, of seeing himself in that vulnerable, helpless state, shattered the wall he'd built to survive. Tears burst free. The emotion he'd been trying to choke down through every question, every memory, finally overwhelmed him completely. His voice cracked, his shoulders trembled, and all that pain he'd buried for a year came flooding out right there, in front of the jury, the cameras, the judge, and the world. For a moment, the courtroom wasn't just witnessing a testimony. They were watching a man break under the unbearable weight of surviving something no human should ever have to remember. The judge could see it. Valonia Norris was breaking right there on the stand, the weight of his own memories crushing him from the inside out. His hands trembled, his breath came in shallow bursts, and his eyes stayed fixed on the floor, trying to hold back another wave of tears. Recognizing that the witness had reached his limit, the judge made a compassionate call. A brief recess. The jury was escorted out, the chatter died down, and for a few minutes, the courtroom fell into a soft, fragile silence. Norris sat there, tissues clutched in his hands, wiping his face, trying to breathe, trying to rebuild the emotional walls that had just collapsed. It wasn't about legal procedure anymore. It was about humanity. What everyone in that room had just witnessed wasn't testimony. It was trauma bleeding through words. Because Valonia Norris wasn't just a witness. He was a symbol of the human cost of gang violence. A young man who had watched his cousin die right beside him, who had nearly died himself, who now lived with scars that would never truly heal. You could see it in his eyes. The weight of loss, the kind that doesn't fade with time. He wasn't reliving one night. He was reliving a lifetime shaped by street wars, loyalty, and loss. The tragedy he described didn't come out of nowhere. It was the culmination of years of bloodshed, of a feud that had torn through Jacksonville's streets, claiming lives, ruining futures, and getting broadcast to the world through drill rap and social media beefs that turned real-life pain into viral content. To understand the full impact of what happened in that parking lot, the court had to rewind, back to the roots, back to the chain of events that led Julio Foolio into the crosshairs that night. This wasn't random. It wasn't impulsive. It was strategic, deliberate, an ambush built on precision and hate. Prosecutors called it violence of action, a chilling phrase describing how everything about the attack had been meticulously coordinated. The planning, the timing, the surveillance, it all fit together like a blueprint for death. The shooters hadn't stumbled upon Julio. They had tracked him, watched him, and waited. The surveillance footage shown in court painted the picture clearer than words ever could. There he was, Julio Foolio, alive and unaware, walking into the Home 2 Suites Hotel in Tampa around 4:30 a.m., wearing a red stocking cap, pulling up his shorts, checking in like it was just another night. You could almost feel the chill through the screen, the eerie calm before everything went dark. That footage became more than evidence. It became a countdown. Every step Julio took, every movement caught on camera, was a step closer to the moment that would end his life. No one in that courtroom could look away. Everyone knew what came next. And that's what made watching it so unbearable. That night, Julio Foolio was supposed to be celebrating life, his 26th birthday. He'd been out performing, hitting clubs, soaking in the moment like a man finally catching a break. But while he was laughing and moving through the city, something darker was moving right alongside him. Because as he tried to check into a Tampa hotel around 4:30 a.m., his every move was being watched. His original room reservation had been cancelled because he'd arrived too late. So there he was, standing in the lobby, talking to the front desk, completely unaware that the clock was already ticking against him. He wasn't just looking for a place to crash, he was walking straight into a setup. Then the courtroom screen flickered, and the surveillance footage fast-forwarded slightly. For a few moments, nothing happened. Just quiet, late-night stillness. And then, something ominous slid into the frame. A car. Not just any car. The prosecutor's voice broke the silence, calm but ice-cold. That car right there, that's the assault team. You could feel the room tighten. This wasn't random traffic. This wasn't a coincidence. That was the vehicle carrying the killers, a group of men who had driven all the way from Jacksonville to Tampa with one purpose: to execute Julio Foolio. The shooters moved with the precision of trained operators. The video showed them looping around the north side of the hotel, staying out of sight, avoiding any route that might tip Julio off. They weren't reacting to anything. They were waiting. They had come prepared, patient, and deliberate. Every movement screamed calculation. This wasn't rage. This was strategy. Then, another car entered the scene. A Nissan Altima, part of Julio's entourage. The driver, TFA McCrae, and his girlfriend Aaliyah Albritton stepped out casually, heading into the lobby to use the restroom. Just another quiet moment. Just normal people doing normal things. None of them had a clue that death was circling the lot, that eyes were locked on them through tinted windows. And then came the detail that twisted the knife. When TFA left the driver's seat, Camilla Bentley, another one of Julio's close friends, slid over into the driver's position. She thought she was just keeping the engine warm, maybe saving time for when they'd pull off again. But in that small, ordinary decision, she unknowingly took the seat that would soon become the front line of survival. Because in a matter of minutes, those same vehicles that looked calm and still on the screen would explode into motion, and the parking lot would become a battlefield. Everyone in that courtroom knew it. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the video as the trap slowly closed in. Kamia Bentley had no idea she was sitting in the middle of a war zone until a bullet ripped through her arm. The entire courtroom could almost feel the pain, the terror, as the prosecutor described those final seconds before the storm. You could hear the tension crackle in the air like electricity as the narration played over the footage. And now, we're mere seconds away from the attack on the Charger. That was it. Seconds. That's all that separated Julio Foolio from life and death. Seconds between laughter and screams, seconds between calm and chaos. The video played on the big courtroom screen, showing the Chevy Cruze, part of the assault team's convoy, slowly creeping into position. The silence in the footage made it even more chilling. Then, it happened. In the lower left corner of the frame, a shooter stepped into view, an automatic Glock clutched in his hands. The courtroom collectively gasped as the flash of muzzle fire lit up the screen. Inside the Dodge Charger, Xavier "Za" Edwards, the driver, reacted on pure instinct. He slammed the gear shift, tires squealing as he tried to escape the gunfire erupting all around them. He wasn't thinking about himself. He was trying to save everyone in that car. But the gunman had come prepared. There was nowhere to go. And then came the most shocking evidence of all, footage captured not by police or witnesses, but by a Tesla parked nearby, quietly charging while chaos unfolded. The car's Sentry mode had been activated, recording every second from multiple camera angles. The high-definition video showed a third shooter sprinting behind a line of cars, ducking low, moving with precision, then taking position near a yellow vehicle, creating a perfect kill zone. The courtroom fell completely silent as the prosecutor paused the video, pointing to the screen. "That's how they boxed them in," she said. "That's how they made sure no one could escape." The jurors sat frozen, watching in disbelief as technology laid out the ambush in chilling clarity, every movement, every shadow, every gunshot. Then came the aftermath footage, the Dodge Charger, towed and sitting in the Tampa police impound lot. Its once sleek surface was now a map of horror. Dozens of yellow evidence stickers plastered across the hood, doors, and windshield, each one marking a bullet's path. Holes riddled the metal like it had been chewed apart. The glass was shattered, the frame bent. This wasn't a shootout. This wasn't panic. This was a full-blown execution. The shooters hadn't fired a few wild rounds. They'd unleashed a barrage meant to annihilate everyone inside that vehicle. Every juror in that courtroom understood right then what those last moments must have been like. No time to think, no way to run, nowhere to hide. Just bullets, screams, and the unbearable realization that it was already too late. When the prosecutor stepped back to the podium, her voice was cold, steady, and absolutely chilling. She wasn't just recounting a crime. She was breaking down a tactical ambush, a moment of military-style precision executed with terrifying efficiency. She said the gunman acted with suddenness, speed, and fury, striking like trained operatives, using overwhelming firepower to trap and destroy their targets. Not one shooter, not two, but three, each armed with high-powered AR-style rifles and a fully automatic Glock 19, spraying bullets with such intensity it drowned out any hope of survival. The prosecutor didn't call it fire superiority. No, she used a term that made everyone's blood run cold. Fire supremacy. That phrase hit the room like a thunderclap. It meant Julio Foolio and his friends never stood a chance. They were ambushed, boxed in, and obliterated before they could even react. The courtroom sat frozen, realizing just how ruthlessly efficient this hit had been. Then came the inevitable question. How did law enforcement even catch the suspects? How do you track down killers who planned everything to perfection? The answer revealed a terrifying truth about modern crime. You can't hide anymore. Every camera, every phone, every digital breadcrumb leads somewhere. Even DJ Academics, while covering the case online, explained the brutal reality. You got Teslas out here acting like 360-degree security guards, recording everything in 4K clarity. And he wasn't lying, because that Tesla footage turned out to be the smoking gun of the entire case. The car's Sentry mode captured the shooter's movements from multiple angles in full 4K resolution. It showed how they moved, where they stood, even how they coordinated. Every second of their so-called perfect plan was now evidence replayed frame by frame for the jury to see. But the Tesla footage was only the beginning. Investigators pieced together an entire web of surveillance data that exposed the killer's every move. Ring cameras from their own homes caught them leaving Jacksonville and returning hours later, their cars matching the ones seen in the hotel footage. Then came the cell phone tower data. Even though one suspect thought he was being slick by leaving his phone at home, detectives subpoenaed the records of his crew. Those phones told the story their mouths couldn't deny, pinging cell towers all along the highway from Jacksonville to Tampa, placing them squarely near the hotel at the exact time of the murder. Every digital trace became a nail in the coffin. What the shooters thought was a flawless plan turned into a trail of receipts, each one leading right back to them. The courtroom sat stunned, realizing the irony. The same technology they used to flex online, to show off, to live-stream their lives, had now become the very thing that would bury them. The prosecution's next witness sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Alicia Andrews, one of the alleged spotters in the ambush, had flipped. She began cooperating with investigators early on, claiming she was just riding along with her boyfriend and had no clue about the deadly plot. But her story started cracking fast once the receipts came in. License plate readers across multiple Florida highways had captured the convoy traveling to and from Tampa, tracing the exact route of the killers. Even more damning, one suspect had borrowed his mother's car, and when investigators questioned her, she confirmed that yes, her son had the vehicle that night. It was the kind of small detail that unravels an entire cover-up. Then came the ballistics evidence, the nail in the coffin. A single shell casing tied the murder directly to one of the shooters, 18-year-old Sean Gathright. Forensics matched the bullet casings and barrel markings to another shooting months prior. The match was exact. In the courtroom, prosecutors didn't have to dramatize it. The science spoke for itself. And that's when the tragedy of it all truly hit. Just 5 years ago, Sean had been a 12-year-old kid, streaming video games online, still innocent, still full of potential. Now, at barely 18, investigators described him as a stone-cold killer, a teenager whose life had been swallowed by the same street cycle that took Julio's. The evidence was staggering. Detectives had footage from inside and outside the Home 2 Suites hotel. They had Cash App records tracking every transaction, who paid for gas, who booked rooms, who covered the food and hotel costs. They even uncovered messages coordinating the trip down to the smallest detail. One suspect's car had mechanical problems, so another covered the expenses, creating a digital trail that investigators followed straight to their doorsteps. Every digital breadcrumb, every camera angle, every transaction told the same story. A premeditated hit carried out with frightening organization. The picture prosecutors painted was airtight. Alicia Andrews, 21, and Isaiah Chance Jr., 21, the spotters. They were the eyes of the operation, tracking Julio's movements, relaying his location in real time. Sean Gathright, 18, Rashad Murphy, 30, and Davian Murphy, 27, the shooters, the ones who actually pulled the triggers, unleashing the gunfire that ended Julio Foolio's life. It was a chilling lineup. 5 people bound together by greed, violence, and misguided loyalty. The trial itself unfolded under heavy security. Prosecutors demanded that several key witnesses, including survivors and informants, have their faces hidden from broadcast, fearing the deadly reach of retaliation. Even with defendants behind bars, Jacksonville's streets were still dangerous. The energy outside the courthouse mirrored the tension inside, people whispering about revenge, about loyalty, about the next move in a feud that seemed endless. Because that's the dark truth of it all. Even as justice plays out under the bright lights of a courtroom, the violence that created it keeps breathing in the shadows. For every conviction, there's another score waiting to be settled, another young life caught in the middle. And in Jacksonville, that cycle doesn't stop, it just reloads. To really grasp how we ended up in that Tampa hotel parking lot on June 23, 2024, you have to rewind way back to the roots of a war that had been simmering for nearly a decade. Because Julio Foolio's death wasn't random, and it wasn't accidental. It was the final chapter in a violent saga that had been building for years, fueled by pride, revenge, and music that blurred the line between art and real-life destruction. This was the cycle of violence. a loop of retaliation that had swallowed Jacksonville's streets whole. The feud between Julio Foolio's KTA 6-block gang and their longtime rivals, the ATK 1200 crew, had been raging since the mid-2010s, leaving behind dozens of bodies and countless broken families. What started as neighborhood beefs, small, personal conflicts, quickly mutated into an all-out street war that spilled across state lines and onto the internet for the world to see. The fight didn't stay in alleys or corners anymore. It went digital. Every shot fired turned into a post, every loss became a song, every tragedy became a viral clip. Drill rap videos became documentaries of death, each one baiting the next response, keeping the cycle alive for clout, respect, or revenge. When rapper Boozy was asked about Julio's death, his reaction was as cold and matter-of-fact as the streets themselves. He said, "I ain't think nothing. I just think, y'all lil. I mean, shit, that's how that go, man. When you at war, that's just how that go." No emotion, no shock, just the tone of a man who had seen too many wars to pretend this was anything new. His words cut deep, because he was right. In this world, death isn't unexpected. It's inevitable. When you live by the code of the streets, the outcome rarely changes, only the names do. Boozy went further, explaining the strategic side of gang warfare. You just gotta try to protect your big dog, cause they take the big dog, they cut the head off the ruse. That one line summed up the entire chessboard of street politics. Julio was the big dog. He wasn't just another member of KTA, he was the face of it, the voice, the target. His music, his visibility, his defiance, they made him both a leader and a marked man. Taking him out wasn't just revenge, it was strategy. A message sent loud and clear: cut off the leader and the crew collapses. But here's the heartbreaking irony. Julio's own fame became his downfall. He had survived multiple attempts on his life, even being shot in the foot in an earlier ambush. You'd think that would make him more cautious, more paranoid. But instead, Julio lived boldly, almost recklessly, as if daring fate to try again. He announced his birthday celebration publicly on Instagram, telling followers to DM him for the address. In the streets, that's a death sentence. You never know who's watching. You never know if that DM is coming from a fan trying to show love, or an enemy waiting to pull a trigger. It's a cruel reality that the same platform that built Julio's fame also handed over his location to the people plotting his end. Every post, every tag, every pull-up invite was a breadcrumb trail leading straight to tragedy. So when the bullets finally flew in that Tampa hotel parking lot, it wasn't just an ambush. It was the inevitable outcome of a life lived on the edge, in a war where exposure equals danger, and where loyalty, fame, and survival are all just temporary. The aftermath of Julio Foolio's death didn't bring peace. It brought more chaos, more disrespect, and a chilling reminder of how deep this war ran. Within hours of the news breaking, his biggest rival, Yungin Ace, dropped a diss track, turning tragedy into fuel for the feud. And just a few days later, he dropped another one. But what truly shocked people was what happened next. Even after Julio's death, his Instagram account kept posting. Someone, presumably a close associate with access to his login, continued responding to rivals, typing as if Julio himself was still alive. The comments, the captions, the back and forth. It turned into a surreal digital ghost war where death wasn't the end of the beef. It was just another round. It felt dystopian, a feud stretching beyond the grave, fueled by clout, pride, and the same social media energy that had kept it alive for years. Julio was gone, but online, the war kept breathing. The role of music in this entire saga can't be overstated. Drill rap, born from the streets of Chicago, had become the soundtrack to Jacksonville's bloodshed. But in this war, the music wasn't just art, it was weaponized. Tracks weren't merely songs, they were statements of dominance, psychological warfare, and provocation. Each side used music to do more than tell their story. They used it to mock the dead, taunt rivals, and immortalize fallen soldiers. Bars became bullets. Hooks became hit lists. Every new drop on YouTube or Spotify carried real-life consequences. The most infamous example of this came from Yungin Ace, whose viral track Who I Smoke flipped the sweet melody of Vanessa Carlton's 1,000 Miles into something sinister. Over that cheerful piano riff, Ace and his crew mocked the deceased members of Julio's gang, name-dropping them while laughing and dancing on a golf course. It was bold, it was ruthless, and it went massively viral. Tens of millions of views on YouTube, countless TikToks, memes, and reactions. But beneath the entertainment was a dark truth. It wasn't just music. It was a taunt, an open challenge, meant to wound and provoke. Every lyric was a message. We're not afraid, and we're not done. Julio didn't stay silent. He fired back with his own record, When I See You, a chilling response that flipped the script. The video was filmed at his rival's gravesites, a direct counter to Ace's mockery. It was as raw and confrontational as music can get, a diss straight from the trenches. The back and forth between Julio and Ace's camps became legendary, but deadly. Each track dropped like a match in gasoline, sparking new retaliation, new shootings, new victims. The feud had transcended music entirely. It was now a cultural war playing out through verses and violence. And looking back, it's painfully clear the signs had always been there. Julio Foolio had survived gunfire before. He was first shot at 15 years old, an attack that should have been his wake-up call. But instead of escaping that world, the trauma became his muse. The streets became his studio, and his pain became his pen. In a tragic twist, his biggest songs came from his deepest scars. And in a genre where truth is currency, Julio's truth was soaked in blood. Every lyric, every video, every post was a reflection of the life he lived, a life where fame and danger were forever intertwined. By the time the feud reached Tampa, the story had already written itself. In Jacksonville's drill scene, every beat carried history, and every name carried consequences. And for Julio Foolio, the music that made him a legend also marked him for death. But instead of pulling Julio Foolio away from the streets, that early brush with death pulled him deeper in. The bullet that almost ended his life didn't scare him straight. It hardened him. After spending 4 to 5 months learning how to walk again, Julio tried to do what society tells every kid to do: get back in school, rebuild, move forward. But when he showed up to re-enroll, the school turned him away. No explanation, no second chance, just a closed door. That moment hit him like another bullet. Rejected by the very system that was supposed to help him, Julio made the choice that would define the rest of his life. I left, he later admitted. And just like that, the final bridge to a normal future burned behind him. From that point on, Julio wasn't just surviving, he was living the street life in full. Arrests and releases became part of his rhythm. Every few months, his name popped up in police reports, gun possession, fights, probation violations, the same cycle playing out again and again. He wasn't the first kid to fall through the cracks, but his fall was being watched, documented, and later turned into music that millions would stream without ever seeing the pain underneath. It wasn't until age 17 that Julio caught his first serious charge, a moment that perfectly summed up the reckless energy that defined his teenage years. It happened on Christmas Day in Orange Park, Florida. Instead of family or gifts, Julio and a few friends decided to cruise around a movie theater parking lot, flashing guns out the window at random cars. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't even planned malice. It was pure, youthful recklessness. A dangerous kind of showing off that's far too common in places where fear and bravado mix. Police spotted the car almost immediately. After a 10 to 15 second chase through the parking lot, they were boxed in. When the officers searched the vehicle, they found 4 guns, 4 teenagers, and a trunk full of heat. It was a recipe for disaster. But somehow, Julio caught another break. Because he was the only juvenile in the group, the court sent him to juvenile detention for just about a month. Then they released him, again. No real intervention, no rehabilitation, just another spin through the revolving door. Julio even admitted later that if he had caught one more gun charge, he would have been sent to a level 8 or level 10 program, meaning 18 to 24 months locked down. But fate, or maybe luck, kept him free. And that freedom sent him right back into the chaos that would define his music and his message. By then, the world around Julio had already changed. Social media, live streaming, and drill rap had fused into something new and dangerous, a megaphone for the streets. What used to be neighborhood beefs had now become public content, broadcast to thousands in real time. Every diss, every threat, every flex turned into a performance, a digital stage for real violence. And Foolio, like so many before him, learned how to play that game well. The more reckless he got, the more attention he drew. The more pain he endured, the more his fan base grew. It was a twisted kind of fame, one built on trauma, not triumph. What's undeniable now is that this new ecosystem, music mixed with clout and cameras, didn't just reflect street beefs, it amplified them. And for someone like Foolio, that combination was both his ticket to fame and his road to tragedy. Now, the same street beefs that once stayed confined to neighborhoods are playing out on a global stage, watched, replayed, and analyzed by millions. Every post, every lyric, every taunt becomes public property, amplified through views, likes, and comments that turn real pain into viral entertainment. Every diss track becomes a dare. Every comment section turns into a digital war zone. The pressure to respond, retaliate, and not appear weak becomes unbearable. Because in this era, silence isn't seen as strength, it's seen as surrender. And for young men who've lost everything but their name, image means survival. The violence in Jacksonville has evolved beyond the streets. It's become an ecosystem fueled by algorithms and attention. And while the world watches, law enforcement in the city has been scrambling to keep up. Sheriff T.K. Waters has spoken openly about the city's ongoing strategy, proactive intervention, not just reaction. His office has been targeting known gang members, identifying high-risk individuals before violence erupts, and using technology to track every movement. And the arrests in Foolio's case show just how far that technology has come. What once would have been an unsolved drive-by is now a carefully reconstructed timeline, built from a mosaic of surveillance footage, cell phone tower data, license plate readers, Cash App transactions, and even social media posts. Every digital footprint became a breadcrumb, leading detectives closer to the truth. A like here, a message there, a car caught on camera for 2 seconds. In the modern world, there are no true ghosts, only data. But the technology, the evidence, the arrests, they can't erase the human cost. They can't reverse what happened in that Tampa hotel parking lot. The courtroom proceedings are still unfolding. More witnesses are being called to the stand. More forensic evidence is being introduced. The prosecutors are slowly laying out their narrative, how months of planning and online taunting turned into one night of bloodshed. Eventually, a jury will have to decide the outcome. Guilty or not, justice or injustice, closure or more pain. And when those verdicts are read, the legal system will do what it's designed to do, assign punishment, not heal wounds. Because the real damage isn't just in the number of bodies that fell, it's in the survivors who still wake up every day with the weight of those memories pressing down on them. It's in people like Valonia Norris, who had to sit in that courtroom, on that witness stand, and relive every scream, every gunshot, every drop of blood. This is the true cost of gang violence, not just the lives taken, but the lives that continue in pieces. The ones left with scars that never fade, questions that never find answers, and guilt that never dissolves. And as this trial continues, piece by piece, testimony by testimony, what's emerging isn't just the story of a rapper's death or a viral drill beef. It's the story of human beings, flawed and complicated, raised in systems that offered them fame before they offered them peace. People whose choices were shaped by survival, whose pain became content, whose conflicts became hashtags. On that night in June, in a Tampa parking lot, their paths collided, and the consequences rippled across the country. When Valonia Norris broke down crying on the stand, it wasn't weakness. It was the sound of someone who'd been strong for too long, someone forced to watch their cousin die and then relive it, again and again. Not just in memory, but in headlines, in hashtags, in the endless cycle of a world that consumes tragedy like entertainment. And that's what this really is. A story about the cost of the streets, the failure of systems, and the burden of survival in a world that never lets the pain fade quietly. Because when Valonia Norris sat there in that witness chair, choking on his own words, he wasn't just describing a murder scene. He was carrying the weight of everything that led up to it. The history, the trauma, the loyalty, and the love that turned into loss. He couldn't stop crying, because he wasn't just remembering his cousin's final moments. He was reliving the nightmare. The sound of gunfire echoing in his head, the flash of muzzle fire through the dark, the smell of blood and burnt metal. Every word he spoke was a wound reopening, every tear a memory he couldn't escape. And sitting in that courtroom, surrounded by lawyers, jurors, and cameras, he wasn't just a witness, he was proof. Proof of what this endless cycle of revenge does to families, to friendships, to entire communities. People talk about gang wars like they're stories, like they're movie plots or song lyrics. But for people like Valonia, it's not entertainment. It's the reason someone's missing at Thanksgiving. It's the reason a mother wakes up crying every night. It's the reason another kid grows up without guidance, ready to repeat the same mistakes. When Julio Foolio died, it wasn't just another rapper lost to the streets. It was a human being, a son, a cousin, a friend. Someone who once had dreams that reached far beyond the city limits of Jacksonville. But the same world that celebrated his talent also magnified his pain. The same platforms that gave him a voice also recorded his downfall. His story, from being a kid shot at 15 to surviving multiple attempts on his life to dying in a car riddled with bullets, is the story of a generation caught between fame and fatality. And now, as the legal system does its work, as lawyers argue, as evidence is shown, as verdicts are read, the truth becomes painfully clear. Nobody really wins. Julio's gone. His family's broken. The shooters, if convicted, will lose their lives to the system, and the city of Jacksonville, it keeps bleeding. The cameras will eventually leave the courthouse. The headlines will fade. The songs and diss tracks that once fueled the beef will get buried under new releases and new conflicts. But for those who lived it, who sat in that charger, who buried their brothers, who watched their friends die, the pain will never disappear. It'll live in scars, in empty rooms, in memories that replay every time a car backfires or a song from that era comes on the radio. Because behind every viral moment, every trending hashtag, every clip dissected on YouTube or TikTok, there's a family still crying, a community still broken, and a witness like Valonia Norris still trying to understand why. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. This wasn't about music or fame or internet clout. It was about choices made in pain, cycles that never stop, and lives cut short before they could truly begin. So when the gavel finally falls, when the verdict is read, when justice takes whatever form it can, the world might move on. But those who lived it, those who lost someone that night, will still carry it. Because in the end, the real sentence isn't handed down by the judge. It's the